Good morning. I love this. You can come on up. Good morning. Good morning. There you go. That's the best part of the service, just sort of trying to get your attention. It's such a lively crowd. I'm so grateful. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. My name is Tony Fisher. I am just so happy to be with you. I'm happy that you're with us. I'm happy that you out there in Etherland are joining us, and all of you out there on the pavilion. It's great to see you out there. Welcome, welcome. As always, it is my joy to appreciate our staff, Anna Riazzi and David Bosworth and Stephanie St. John, who keep things going on a daily basis. The crew here today, Daniel Goodsit and John Forsyth in the AV room. Abby and Sean Allison, our co-music directors. Our choir today here in person for the first time. And I'm especially grateful for our worship associate for the day, Catherine Costello.
Thank you, Tony, and my greetings to you as well. One of the pleasant duties of being the worship associate on Sundays is to share the mission statement, and I don't think we ever get tired of hearing it because it's wonderful. We are a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Here we learn and grow together and try to live our values both within and outside these walls. If you found us for the first time, in person or online, please let us know so we can include you in all of our wonderful news. So much wonderful activity goes on in this congregation. Missy's going to talk to you for a minute, and then I'll be back.
Good morning. I'm Missy Cowan, and I'm excited to serve as the chairperson for Weekend Meals for Kids. And we're ready for the first slide. Can you speak into the mic? Yes. I'm waiting for, there we go. As many of you know, for the last 9 years, our members and friends of our congregation have responded with volunteers and financial support to help meet the needs of Collier County students who quietly go hungry over the weekend. From our humble start with one school in 2013, we have gradually expanded the program to include 5 elementary schools. As you can see, the program has grown over time from 10 to 130 children since its inception. This year, we have already received a request from one of our schools to add an additional 20 students next year. Be assured, our volunteers are prepared to honor that request if the funding we receive will support it. Wednesday mornings are a very busy time at the church as food that has been purchased is unloaded and placed onto our expanded storage shelves in Thomas Hall. Volunteers then spend about 2 hours sharing personal stories and laughter while somehow managing to also assemble the bags containing 2 days' worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners and load them into the cars to be delivered and distributed at the schools. Now I'd like to take just a moment to recognize all of the wonderful, committed group of volunteers that make all of this possible. If you have helped out with weekend meals this year, will you please stand? Where are my volunteers? Come on. Okay. Now, wait. Get back up. We're going to demonstrate. I want all the volunteers to throw both of your hard-working hands up in the air and wave those fingers around, because they have worked hard. All right. Thank you. And now, a brief message from some of the students at Golden Gate Elementary.
Thank you so much for the weekend bag.
Sorry, what do you like?
I like the apple juice.
Kyler, how about you?
My favorite is the macaroni cheese.
Good one. Bethany.
I like mac and cheese.
Chloe. Granola bars, those are yummy in there. Yasmin.
I like the spaghetti.
Spaghetti, it's so yummy. Bailey.
I like the macaroni cheese and granola bar.
Granola bars. Aparicio.
I like the cereal.
Cereal. What about you, Karen?
I like the chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk is so yummy. Friends, let's wave a friendly goodbye. Say thanks so much for all that you donate to us.
Thank you so much for all you donate.
So the need is still great in the Naples area. Here's how you can help for the coming school year. You can sponsor a child for one school year of weekend meals for $250, or co-sponsor a child for $125, or give whatever contribution you consider to be helpful. All donations are warmly appreciated. And here's how you can donate. You can submit your donation by mailing a check to the church, or dropping a check in the offering plate and listing weekend meals in the memo line. Or you can go to uunaples.org, click on the Serve Others tab at the top, then in the drop-down box, click on Weekend Meals for Kids. And here's a tip to remember it, because we serve others their weekend meals. Then it's a quick click to the yellow donate button where you can go wild with your donation and complete your transaction. You can also meet us outside on the pavilion following the service. We'll be set up at a table out there where you can make a donation and also sign up to volunteer if you so choose. Now I'm going to leave you with this expression of thanks from the school counselor at Vineyards Elementary.
Hi, Vineyards Elementary School would like to thank your congregation for providing our students with weekend meals that show them your love and provide them with nourishment. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day.
We all know that titles are important to people. When I joined UUCGN, and shortly thereafter joined the Worship Associates Committee, I was so glad not to be called minister's assistant. Worship Associates has an importance to it, and I appreciate the Unitarian approach of making people feel valued. I think I speak for all of the Worship Associates when I say that although the concept of Worship Associates was started in the late 1980s and was used throughout a number of congregations, it wasn't until Tony came and established it here at UUCGN that Worship Associates were here. And I am very thankful and grateful to Tony for believing in the richness of member participation for the service. I'm honored each time I'm given the opportunity to stand before you and say, and now let's settle ourselves into this time of worship with the morning's prelude.
as drops of rain that find each other and build to become a track, a rivulet, a stream, a river, a sea. So are we drawn together. So are we fortunate to find each other. So are we bound together on this shared passage towards an unknown ocean. Let's join together in the chalice lighting response. The words will be on your screen. May this flame stir our hearts and remind us of our mission to be truly welcoming, to grow in mind and spirit, and to widen the circle of peace, justice, and love. And let's join together in singing. Actually, we can rise and sing our opening hymn. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. Flowing in my mind.
Be seated, and I invite up to the chancel this morning Brad Cornell, former president of this congregation, long-time member. Both of his children were brought up in this congregation. You knew this place when there were geodesic domes over here and took part in the march. I know your son Nathaniel sort of led the way across to this sanctuary, so welcome up front. You're here. First of all, you're providing the forum tomorrow night, which is about water issues in Southwest Florida.
7 o'clock.
Online only, I think, and but also
Right.
as the policy director for not only the Audubon of Southwest Florida, but also of all of Florida. Is that correct?
Audubon Western Everglades, which is the Collier County chapter, and Audubon Florida that owns and manages Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. So yes, the state organization.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not policy director for them, though. I'm policy staff.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. We will give you that promotion if you prefer.
I have two bosses, so it's always a little bit confusing.
So my question for you is, I know you're a musician, that you played trombone for the Naples Philharmonic at one point and studied music. So what got you involved in environmental issues and with Audubon?
Well, when I was a kid, I grew up with a grandmother that taught me all about all the birds, and I gardened with my brother, and I think I've always had this sense that there was some sort of impending disaster that was threatening the ecological world, and even as a little kid. So I had always wanted to do conservation work because I felt like we didn't have a lot of time to accomplish that mission, even as a little kid.
Wow.
So I took a little 25-year detour into music and then came back.
Well, that's unusual because many of us grow up sort of unaware of the environmental issues that we've been facing for a long time. I know Rachel Carson wrote about this, in the last century, but in the 50s and 60s. But most of us were sort of slow on the uptick. So, well, thank you for that and your passion for doing that. So here we are in Southwest Florida and the Western Everglades, and there are a lot of issues that we face right now. One of them I can only imagine is the number of people in Florida. And I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but I know that the state is hoping, I guess, and expecting millions more people to come to our area.
I'm not sure about that hoping part. It depends on who you ask. I think there are a lot of people that are hoping that this sort of fascination that some folks have with building walls, that they'll build a wall at the Georgia line and nobody else comes. But that's just a few of us. There are like 21 million people in Florida now, maybe more, and the demographers at the University of Florida expect another at least 10 million over the next couple of decades.
Wow.
So that's a challenge.
And so what do we do to, in terms of water, what do we do to ensure that there's enough water? Because I think we're already sort of straining our reserves.
So Florida is fortunate to have, we get 50 to 60 inches of rain a year, so it's hard to say that we don't have enough water, but somehow the way we manage our water isn't very wise. And when you have that many people on the landscape, we end up with problems. And because especially Southwest Florida and South Florida are kind of, we get our water when nobody's here. Well, not nobody, but in the summertime. And then
I've experienced it. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah. So if you stick around and don't head north, you'll notice we get a lot of rain, lots more than we have right now. And so we come to the dry season, and it becomes a crisis. Not only a crisis of how much water, but the quality of the water, and the groundwater. And this sort of threat is increasing, and we have created a climate crisis to exacerbate all that. And because of the great amounts of water that come in the summertime, we've created canals that are really efficient at getting rid of the water in the summer, but then when we really need it now, we don't have it. So we're a little foolish in that way. And I think that's our challenge as a society, is to figure out, how do we address that timing problem? It's a literal conservation problem.
So what are some of the solutions that are being talked about?
One of the biggest threats of all these people on this landscape is nutrients. And if you talk to water managers anywhere, eutrophication and nutrients in water are just a plague worldwide. From our own wastes to animal waste to fertilizer for things like lawns and grass and golf courses. I hate to say, I see it as I look out the window, I see our own grass, and grass, frankly, is an evil plot to destroy the environment. It's my own personal opinion. But you get my point that when we fertilize those things, all that fertilizer goes into that canal that's just beyond those bushes between here and the I-75. And that canal dumps its water ultimately into the Gulf and our estuaries. And then we get things like harmful algal blooms like red tide and blue-green algae blooms that are threatening not only to wildlife. If you remember 2018, we lost, about 2,000 tons. That's 2,000 times 2,000 pounds of wildlife, marine mammals and birds, sea turtles, dolphins, manatees that all died because of red tide, a huge red tide bloom that really engulfed the state of Florida. And a lot of that is due to nutrients that feed those kinds of events. So we have got to figure out a way to manage our nutrients better. And having wetlands, we also, as we build homes for these millions of people, we destroy wetlands. And the wetlands are nature's kidneys that would help us remove some of those nutrients naturally. So you see a little bit of a cycle of reinforcing problems that we know how to solve, but so far we're having a little trouble with that. Another really important way to solve the problem is if we give nature just a little bit of breathing room, literally and figuratively, like with Everglades restoration or buying land for conservation or building systems that remove nutrients, restoration actually works. In a very, very short amount of time, Everglades restoration projects that are almost finished are showing amazing results, just amazing results. So this is not a fait accompli. We can solve this problem if we put our minds to it and actually apply what we know.
Wow. So when I drive across Alligator Alley in my hybrid car, just so you know, the picture in my mind is now going to be nature's kidneys, and I just don't know. But thank you for that. Yeah, no. So,
Sure.
From an environmental justice point of view, what can we do? Do you have any thoughts about that?
So we as a religious community have to be conscious, and I say we, Unitarian Universalists here, but also conservationists. I work for Audubon. We all need to be much more aware of how water pollution and environmental damage and the impacts of climate change affect poor people much more than everybody else in the world. I think we have been reading about that. I'm sorry to say that the conservation community is late to that realization. We are trying to make up for past sins of not having advocated for disadvantaged communities. Highways have been built right through neighborhoods of less wealthy people. Landfills, wastewater treatment plants get built where nobody else wants them, and these are terrible things. And just recently, the Army Corps of Engineers came up with a plan to adapt Collier County to sea level rise and storms. And they were going to build flood walls and gates and close off passes. But they left out the poorer communities. It's like, what are you thinking about? Whatever we do, we have to do it for everybody. And this is a realization that's going to involve, helping people mitigate the damage of these things that we're doing, to plan better in the future, to cite the kinds of things that we have to do, like wastewater treatment plants better, to build affordable housing so that as we migrate away from the coast, which we're going to have to, that we build communities that everybody can afford to live in.
Yeah. Our conversation before, you talked about that wonderful quote from Theodore Parker, that the arc of the universe bends toward, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. But we know we need to actually be bending it ourselves. So it involves all of us at all levels. And Audubon hopefully will be leading that way, and other organizations locally, Calusa Waterkeepers and groups like that.
I think that water is something, and climate change, these are such big issues that make us feel powerless and make us feel alone and helpless and even depressed about this. But I think our salvation is in collaboration, to make alliances, to work together, to realize that if we don't work for everybody's benefit, for all creatures' benefit, then we are going to have a dim future. So, but that doesn't have to happen. And
right.
Taking some proactive action is our prerogative and our obligation if we want a different future, a fairer future.
Right. Well, tomorrow is World Water Day, in case you didn't already know. And there are plenty of resources online for you to discover what you can do. Locally here, there are many organizations, as I said, that are working, and we can take their lead. on April 23rd in Cambier Park. There's an large Earth Day celebration that's sponsored by many organizations, including this one. And we hope you'll be there and active. So I very much appreciate both your presence, your work. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, our UCGen Mindful Monday Forum on Zoom. Information about that is in the newsletter or in the emails that come out. And if you need to know more, then we can check with me or check with somebody after the service so that you can find out about that information. So thanks, Brad, so much.
Thank you, Tony.
So let's take a deep breath and center ourselves for our time of sharing with our centering hymn, Spirit of Life. Remain seated, but please sing along.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
We take time each week to remember those in our acquaintance, in our family, and our friendships, in our community for whom we have concern, for whom we share joy or sorrow. This morning I have a great sorrow to share in that one of our former members, spirited members, Cheryl Lash, passed away the other night. Cheryl left us about 2 years ago and went to live near her niece near St. Petersburg, and unfortunately passed away 2 nights ago. So we send our thoughts to Cheryl's family. There'll be more about Cheryl in the Caring Corner this week. We also hold in our hearts 2 people who are leaving us for other places. Robin Schrage, who's been a strong member of this community, a wonderful member of this community for so long, is heading to Oregon to be close to family. Robin, where are you? You're over there. And Margot is leaving for Pittsburgh at the beginning of April to be closer to family. And so we will miss both of you as we move forward. But we'll welcome you back anytime you desire to come back. And we'll miss you greatly and wish you the best as you move to other adventures. If you have a joy, a person or someone you're holding and would like to share that, to speak that name out loud, I invite you to do that. Vibrate your lungs both here and those of you online on the patio. Please do so. Joys and sorrows. thank you. All of us hold the people of Ukraine in our hearts as they struggle with this incredible invasion and with their displacement. It's hard for us to imagine here what that life must be like. And maybe some of us know, but being disrupted, taken out of our homes, it's very difficult to imagine the pain and the sorrow and the angst that people are experiencing. Let's join together in the spirit of meditation. Today I offer a poem by the British-American poet Denise Levertov, who wrote from her heart, from her values, from her political views. This poem titled Beginners. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud. How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy, only begun to envision how it might be to live as siblings to beast and flower, not as oppressors. Surely our river cannot already be hastening into the sea of non-being. Surely it cannot drag in the silt all that is innocent. Not yet. Not yet. There is too much broken that must be mended, too much hurt that we have done to each other that cannot yet be forgiven. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitudes in the communion of struggle. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in bud. Let's share a few moments of silence.
I stand before you as a vessel of water. According to, well, depending on age and sex and all kinds of other conditions, we're told we're about 60% water. Even our bones. For most of my life, if somebody had given me a true false and said there's water in our bones, I would have said false. So tomorrow on Water Day, why don't you drink an extra glass of water? And as that water passes down your throat, give your gratitude to it. All right, from East Africa, this is Listening to the Spirit of Water by Chief Tamale Boya. He's the Grand Chief in the Buganda Kingdom, a Bantu kingdom within Uganda. He supervises cultural activities, serves as spiritual arbitrator, and facilitates rehabilitation and purification ceremonies. Now, you know when I get up in front of this group and I do a poem or a reading, I always give you some anticipation, something to look forward to, so that your mind is waiting for it. And so this time I'm going to ask you to wait for his plea, which comes almost at the end and begins with, "Let's awaken the silent energies of the planet." And so, listening to the Spirit of Water. From a spiritual perspective, planet Earth is seen as an irregular ball immersed in water. If the sacred gift of Earth is life, then water is the keeper of life. Nearly all living beings contain large amounts of water in their bodies. Water facilitates their functions. Atmospheric space, too, consists of elements of water in vapor or in gaseous form. Atmospheric space. Therefore, water is the reconnecting element between our materialistic life and the spiritual world. Human beings cannot be co-creators without adherence to the fundamental phenomenon of nature, and water is a major element to study and carefully handle. It is through water that we are physically and spiritually interrelated and interconnected with the living and non-living beings of Earth and to the whole of life. Through the conventional systems, water connects mountains with valleys and plants with animals by sharing products or byproducts essential to each. Hence, water facilitates the natural phenomenon of interdependence. Our developmental policies, which portray water as a commodity to be traded and taxed to enrich some individuals, must be changed. Water is a right for all. Nature provides it freely with the rains. Governments should raise external resources to enable the free distribution of water to all citizens, and natives should be involved in the management of sacred natural resources. Let's awaken the spirit, the silent energies of the planet, by uniting as communities to live in harmony with the spirits of life and work directly with nature. Here is one path by which we shall reconnect to the silent value of water and nature as a whole for the benefit of humanity and the well-being of an interconnected world community.
Peace like a river in my soul.
Shout out to the basses out there. They're making some nice rumbles. I appreciate that. One of the most remarkable and spiritual experiences that I've had is floating, literally being held up by groundwater at the bottom of a cenote in the Yucatan Peninsula. Being held up by water, looking up at this nearly circular rim, 40 feet, maybe more, up above the surface of the water, the groundwater. Cascading greens coming over the edge, and from those greens, water dripping, streaming down and hitting the pool of water and making incredible sounds. Just thinking about it makes me feel wonderful and connected. And that was the feeling. There I was, being held up by water, listening to water, breathing a humid air of Mexico, just immersed and feeling at home in the earth. This is the water planet, the blue planet. Almost 3/4 of its surface is covered by this most essential element. It's water that's given Earth its distinctive character, water that has made possible the formation of the planet's first life forms, the primary ingredient of that creative soup in which organic compounds mixed and merged for nearly 4 billion years. The life of this planet, water has played a critical role in the evolution and the survival of life. The myriad and miraculous forms of that life exhibit a wide range of tolerance to the presence or lack of water within their environments, but all are ultimately dependent. Water acts as both a solvent and a delivery mechanism, dissolving essential nutrients, delivering them to living, functioning cells. Our bodies use water to flush out toxins, to regulate body temperature and metabolism. As Catherine said, the blood that courses through our veins is 92% water, the blood. Our brain and our muscles are about 75% water. And yes, our bones are 22% water. Who would have guessed? We can live for a number of days without food, heaven forbid. But we can only live a few days without water. So it's no wonder that from the very beginning of humankind, water has held such a deep and important meaning. In her book titled Hiding in Plain Sight, author Molly Wolf writes about water with great expression. Water is marvelously expressive stuff, she writes, perhaps the most beautifully symbolic stuff of all. The water of life, the water of baptism, the water that cleanses and heals, the water that breaks down and destroys, the water that lifts us and floats us when we come aground, the water that churns and pounds us out of our complacency into awareness, the water of swamps and sloughs and soggy despond, the rolling sea ice powerfully sculpting a coast, soft groundwater tenderly upwelling to green a barren landscape, the singing chuckle of a creek, the roar of a fall, the calm assurance of a great river, the crash of a sea swell, the quiet privacy of fog. Rain washing or slashing or downpouring or falling gentle as a leaf. The soft healing or bitter springing or joyful welling of salt tears. There is so much of water in our lives and so much to be grateful for. In addition to being the source of and sustenance of life, water has played a critical role in most of the major turning points in human history. As Stephen Solomon wrote in his 2010 book, Water, the Epic Struggle for Wealth, Power, and Civilization, every era has been shaped by its response to the great water challenge of its time. And so it is unfolding on an epic scale today. An impending global crisis of fresh water scarcity is fast emerging as it is the defining fulcrum of world politics and human civilization. The surge of migrants and refugees around the globe can be increasingly explained in terms of water scarcity perpetuated by climate change. And given all of this, it's hard to understand how we could take water for granted. But there it is, flowing so easily and simply at the turn of a faucet. I said that nearly 3/4 of the earth is covered by water, but as you know, most of that is salt water. More than 97% of the earth's water is in the oceans, which means that less than 3% of the earth's water is fresh. And almost all of that fresh water is locked up either in the polar or glacial ice, where we desperately want it to stay, or rests below us in the earth, and most of that groundwater is not accessible. So what's left? If we could collect all the fresh water from all the surface sources on the planet, springs, streams, rivers, lakes, the source of water that most people in life on land need every day to survive, if we could collect all of this in one sort of spherical container, one large water tower, for instance, it would only be about 35 miles in diameter, or about the distance between here and Fort Myers. Think of that marble sitting on top of the land between us. That's all of the fresh available water in the world. Of course, this relatively small amount of accessible fresh water is not evenly distributed around the globe. So what we in places of relative abundance often take for granted, this is the source of daily anxiety for many, many people around the globe. Close to 750 million people lack access to safe drinking water. Fortunately, in many areas, there are solutions to these. Micro-solutions involve teaching local populations how to install and maintain simple water filtration systems so that they can draw from more immediate sources instead of traveling great distances for their water. But as Stephen Solomon pointed out in his book, the story is being played out today on a much greater scale. Water continues to be a major issue in the Middle East, maybe more critical than oil, in fact. And now that we've begun to see the effects of climate change in our own Western states, where the extended drought is causing political and economic strife, many Western aquifers have been overused and are near collapse. The quality of water in our cities is questionable, as is evidenced about what happened in Flint, which wasn't necessarily an anomaly. Many of our water systems are aging. And though we seem surrounded by water here in Florida, as Brad was talking about, especially in the rainy season, the aggressive use of our own underground aquifers to provide an ever-growing population, along with the release of fertilizers and pesticides into the system, is even now creating problems for the state that only promise to get worse as more and more people arrive. There is some good news. Technology is being brought to bear not only in small-scale systems, but in improved large-scale desalination plants being constructed around the world. In San Diego County, a reverse osmosis desalination plant produces 50 million gallons of fresh drinking water every day. It's been working since 2015. But unfortunately, again, as Brad mentioned, the cost of such technology currently makes it accessible to only those countries that are wealthy. Around the world, there's been a growing use of constructed wetlands to replicate the natural wetlands, to remove toxins. Brad talked about this as well. Wouldn't it be great if we just left the natural wetlands alone and didn't have to reconstruct them? But here we are. And while certainly we should celebrate these innovative solutions, we also need to frame those solutions in terms of a fair and equitable distribution. As we talked about, it's our work to bend that arc towards justice. Aaron Brockovich, who wrote the book Superman's Not Coming, about the water crisis in the United States, says the solution lies with us, the people in their communities and the local and state level working for change. We don't need to wait for anyone to come and save us. We can start small, start in our neighborhoods, and work to make significant changes that will impact generations to come. Ask questions. That's the beginning. Ask questions. What is your community doing about water preservation? And we also need to remember that water is not just a resource, but that since the beginning of civilization, it has held that sacred dimension for humankind, the source of life. It's a sustaining and healing substance. To know this sacred aspect of water is to understand our responsibility as water keepers. Water connects us with each other and with all of life. It's the essential element for the physical and emotional well-being of all creatures. Understanding that the web of life of which we are a part needs fresh water to survive and flourish, we must see and feel that access to this resource is an important right that should be held for all. The music today, the great music today, thank you all. It's been wonderful with references to rivers and mighty streams, soon to come. At the end of one of my very favorite books, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, the protagonist, having grown old in the search for enlightenment, sits beside the river with his teacher, Vasudeva, and listens. At first, he hears all the things he's heard before, the gurgles and the waves. But soon the sounds of the river merge, and he senses a wholeness, the unity of all things as reflected in that great stream. And Siddhartha hears for the first time what his teacher has been waiting for him to hear, the many voices of the river blending into the one voice of life. Let us take time to sit beside the water and listen to what it has to share. We are all one, made of the same substance and life force. May we be inspired and empowered to think and act responsibly as water keepers on this beautiful blue planet. You take time, I hope, to reflect on today's service, this great music. I hope that you will also pitch in and help this congregation and its mission to move forward, creating that larger world of peace, justice, and love. The morning's offering for the ongoing mission of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples will be gratefully received. All the information for you online was there on the screen, and there it is again. Thank you, Daniel. And I hope that if you need to, you can go to our website and donate as well. Thank you.
I know you're ready for a stretch. You've been sitting and listening and thinking for so long, but please listen to the announcements this morning because there's some great stuff to be reminded of. I'm going to sort of go in chronological order, except for one I'm going to save for last. You already know about Mindful Monday tomorrow night with Brad, and after hearing him talk today, wow, I know you're going to be interested in that. Online and free. Wednesday, 2 events online, 5 o'clock. Tony will be offering an orientation for anyone interested in joining this congregation. That will be by Zoom. At 7 o'clock, Mike Kirko, Vice President of Finance, will have a Zoom presentation on our budget. And even though it's the business that we have to attend to, don't forget, next Sunday is our annual meeting. So Sunday, March 27th, after the service, this will be offered in hybrid form. How about that? Here in the sanctuary and online. So that's really super important stuff. The last announcement is something that's going to happen today, right now, after this service. So get your stretch and get re-energized, and don't forget about this one. After the service, we hope you will join our special guest, Brandy Anderson, for an important session titled The Attack on Critical Race Theory in K-12 Education and What We Can Do About It. You know, my heart goes out to this as a lifelong educator and living in the state of Florida. Brandy Anderson is a lawyer and educator and founder of the Anti-Racism Academy, a full-service racial equity and inclusion firm that serves schools, nonprofits, and Fortune 500 companies. The workshop is presented as part of our Progressive Voices Speak Out lecture series and is co-sponsored by Taro, our team against racism on oppression and oppression. Tickets are still available. So regroup and stay for this wonderful presentation. Oh, that every congregation gathering across this country this morning would do some of the things that happen right here in our building. We are so fortunate.
Let's join together in singing our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home, 1064 in the teal
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, earth is my blue boat home.
Thank you. Thank you. One quick reminder that 2 weeks from yesterday, April 2nd, the Coalition of Immokalee Workers is holding an important action in Palm Beach, Florida. I will be there, as will Mary Catherine Morin, the president of our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. This is an action in support of farm workers' justice. So I hope you'll think about that. There'll be more information about that in the news this week as well. Our closing words are by the great Pakistani poet Rabindranath Tagore, the Bengali poet, sorry. The same stream of life that runs through our veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It's the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth and in numberless blades of grass and breaks in tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death and ebb and flow. May we all be made glorious by the sacred touch of this world of life. Go in peace. Go in love. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget the workshop after the service.